Buddy Holly.
Later, baby, you'll be through.
Maybe Baby.
Later, baby, I'll have you for me.
Isn't that great?
It's funny, honey, you don't care. You never...
We'll catch him back on the, going outside. The reason I chose Maybe Baby for this musical intro and exit on this piece was because, this is about memory or lack thereof. The actual title is Walk Down No Memory Lane. Oh, yeah. And I couldn't really find anything appropriate, so I chose one that I love. And Maybe Baby kind of has that connotation of maybe. And the story of my memory or lack thereof starts off with what used to happen to me all the time. All the time. 35, 40 years ago when I was a young buck, I still had no memory. You see all this repair work up here? Well, God knows what part I had to play in it, but, I'm sure it, What am I going to do? I carried on. Had no memory. I could remember my drum parts. That's what was important. But what I didn't remember was time after time, my friends would be telling this story about my antics because, I was the life of the party. I mean, to be truthful about it, to be brutal about it. Because I like to have fun. I've always liked to have fun. Memory or no. Don't care if I remember it, I'm going to have fun. And so they would often tell me this story about yada, yada, yada. And they'd say, you don't remember that? And I'd say, no. And I don't even remember the stories I'm talking about. I just remember them saying, you don't remember that? So there's a good insight for you on to my lack of memory. But the first horror story about my memory occurred to me some time ago. And that was before I realized how bad my memory or lack thereof was. And in our little town of Monterey, California, there was the main bar, which was the Pink Elephant Bar, and they had plenty of room for bands, and we made our way in there, and we said, hey, we're a band, we're playing here, and they said, well, all right, mister. And we packed the place, and they made money, and we had fun, and, the way it goes. I'll never forget the first time I tried to introduce people. I didn't know that my mind was selective. A selective memory. What that really means in this case is no matter what you're trying to remember, that's the thing you can't remember. And there were so many times, like when there's a name of a movie or the name of an actor, I can give you all the hints about it, except for the thing that I want to remember. I can't remember either the guy's name, if that's what I want to remember, or the title of the movie, if that's what I want to remember. But I can give you all the clues about it, what happened in it, so it's selective white lighting out. You know what white lighting out is, don't you? That is that when your brain malfunctions, everything turns bright white like you're dead, There's no memory, there's no nothing. Okay, so here was my first lesson. I was naive at this time. It was one of our first gigs in the Pink Elephant Bar, and I wanted to be sociable because, hey, I like people. I guess. I mean, I assumed I did. Didn't know. So anyway, during one of the breaks, there's this very nice couple. Had no idea who they are. But I remember there was a very nice couple, very attractive. Well, I remember she was attractive. I assume he was because he was with her. It's just the way it works. So I had just met these young people. And I thought, well, gosh, this is nice meeting them. So, here's my bandmate here. May I introduce? And as soon as I tried to remember my bandmate's name, this is a guy I spent many an hour with, many a year with. As soon as I tried to remember his name to introduce him, white lighted out. Couldn't remember. So I said, I would like you to meet. And there I am with my nothing in my hand. So what do? I tried going the other way around. Now I just met these lovely people. So I turned around and said, I'd like to introduce white light. Couldn't remember their names because I wanted to remember. I could remember everything else, but not. So you know what happened, don't you? I never introduced anyone ever again. Never. Wasn't going to make that mistake again. Here I was just trying to be sociable with these nice people, and I just totally messed it up, man. Couldn't remember my bandmate's name? Well, that just shows to go, yeah. So I said, oh, you have a memory problem. No more introductions for you. Now, you know, I'm sure that I appeared rude and because it's normal when somebody, you know, comes along and you introduce them because, oh, here they are. Not me, brother. I don't care how rude I look. I wasn't going to be rude, misunderstood is one thing. Not being able to come through on the memory, yeah. Rather avoid that. So that's just the introduction to what we got going here. There's a couple people that I spent some time with that I want to tell you about in Montreal. The main one was my closest best friend for so many years, Slow Ted. And by his graciousness and his giving, he saved me many a time from living in my truck. He would, and I had a girlfriend that followed me from when I lived in Virginia. Oh, God, what a nightmare that was. But anyway, I met Mary Ray back there, and she followed me here. God knows why. But hey, she did. And Ted took Mary and me in. Well, maybe he wanted Mary there. Look, he could have her. Right? But that's how generous he was. He lived in a Quonset hut, first of all. You know what that is? It's one of those army things that's shaped like this. A Quonset hut. He lived in a Quonset hut in Montreal, but it was a couple miles down. I believe it was called Start Hill Road. And being an alcoholic, I would often have to walk down that 1.5 miles or 2 miles of road. No streetlights. And this is up on the side of a mountain. And there were no lights. And if I didn't have it together enough to have a match or something, well, it could be very risky because one false move, brother, You make a wrong step, you're going down the mountain, you're out of here. And there was many a time where I just had to kind of put my foot around. Oh yeah, that sounds like road, okay. And then another foot, oh, that sounds like road, okay. Really. Blind drunk is one thing, but oh man. But anyway, when you get through the journey of walking, there was this wonderful little Quonset hut that my friend Ted had rented. Oh, what a dream little place it was once you got there. And he was generous enough he had a couple extra beds and he let Mary and me move in. Oh my God, thank you, Ted. Thank you. And later on, he bought a house, and what did he do? He didn't learn his lesson the first time. He had me move in as his roommate in the house that he had bought. Once again, thank you, Ted. I mean, I had a 55 Chevy truck. Man, I love that truck. But I was never a good businessman. I bought it for $75. A steal. You know what I sold it for? You know. That's right. $75. Because I'm not a businessman. I would pull my eye teeth if I still had them to get that truck back. Oh, man, what a lovely piece of machinery. And here it is, right here, a rendition of it. Let me turn this extra light on. See that? Oh, my God, that's what I had. Real bumpers. Oh, man, and a motor that just would not quit, and it's so easy to work on. You just open it up, boom, and there it all is, right in front of you. Mine was the 55 Chevy. Now, when I lived with Ted, we were both musicians and very strict non-9-to-5ers. You know, musicians, one of the things that the jokes are, when you hit a bad note or you don't get a phrase right or whatever it is, the saying is, don't quit your day job. In other words, you're messing up, man. You can't depend on your music ability to get you through life. Don't quit your day job. That's the explanation of the joke. But really what it meant was, in reality, don't let your old lady quit her day job. That's what we called them back then, as old ladies. They don't like that, and I can't blame them. But that's what we called them. And we couldn't have a straight job. I mean, look at us. Plus, you know, all the hair. But the girls, well, they looked just lovely as can be. They couldn't tell by looking at them that, you know, they came home to people like me. So it was a perfect type of ruse. Sorry, dear. But the girlfriends often had the steady jobs while we did the musicianship because that's what we were doing. You don't like it? But don't go. Just don't quit your job. Now this story about my memory, oddly at first seeming, is my best friend Ted who bought the house. And the way that we avoided having to have a real job was we did inventive things like, well, I can only imagine it was him that found it, but out by the airport in our county, there's a bunch of industrial blah, blah. And there happened to be this business that made grape steaks for grape growers. There's all kinds of grapes around Sonoma County. And as it turns out, the original grape steaks raw that they get are this long. Well, the growers needed them this long. 2 by 2 by 2. So there were all these pieces that they were throwing away. And we drove by one day and we said, hey, is it okay if we take these? And I said, yeah, sure. In their minds, we're actually doing them a favor because they were hauling them away or something. Well, don't worry about that. We'll haul them away. So here was all this free wood. And what we would do instead of having a real job is, well, we knew a lot of people and we knew a lot of cold people because these cabins in Montreal, where people started living in full time, full year round, they weren't meant for that. They were cold because they had walls this thin. And as nice as it is in the summertime, man, it's freezing in the winter. So, we had customers for wood. Everybody had wood stoves. So these grape stakes, they burnt really fast, but hey, they burned. And so we would constantly load up these grape stakes for these poor people who needed them moved. And we would drive up to Montreal, and who's next? And if they paid extra, well, we might stack it nicely, but usually wasn't worth our time. We just, and sometimes I'd say, hey, can't it? Look, you want it or not? Yeah, all right then. Payola. That's how we survived. The reason I tell you that story is because it's a lead-in to the story of a friend of mine named Harold. Now, I told you the story about my 55 Chevy truck. Turn the light on again. Well, mine was a 55, and my friend Harold had a 56 or later version, and the reason I know that is because you see that little window in the corner there when you're looking around to see if somebody's coming in back? Mine didn't have that window. That was the 55 that I had. It was blind there. And they finally caught on from 56 on, and they started putting in this extra window. So Harold and I had almost identical trucks. Turn this light off. Except his was a 56 or further because it had that window. And once again, the business that we were in, I don't know what happened with the, Ted and I doing business, but whatever. There's a certain time I was working with Harold. And it snowed like heck for a couple years in a row. And to people who have chainsaws and want to sell wood, this is a blessing from God. Manna from God. Because we were actually helping the county out. I mean, they couldn't get there fast enough to cut these trees off all over the road and everything. Thank God. We got there as quick as we could, and we cut what we could, and we sold it, thank you. And we used mainly Harold's truck with the 3 windows, the extra windows. Because when you're hauling a whole truckload of wood and you're barely keeping the thing stable, you don't want to be pulling out on the highway blind. You want to see if somebody's coming up the road to kill you. So we mainly used his truck for the hauling of the wood just because we could see out. I mean, that's really it. We used mine a couple times, but it was dangerous. And Harold, if you look up hippie in the dictionary, or ask your grandfather or something, that was Harold. That picture, they took that picture of Harold. He had big long beard. He had a big long mustache. He had big long flowing hair, so that really you could only see like this much of his face. Must have been a mysterious lover type thing, with the girl. He had a beautiful girlfriend. A very nice lady. And because of the girlfriend, once again, he was staying up at the top of this mountain in Monterey, where the girlfriend lived in this house. It wasn't the top of the mountain, but it was the end of the road. You couldn't go road-wise up any further. Perfect. Because I was living in my truck at the time. I had a nice little camper on it. Man, it was great. Living with my girlfriend, Mary Ray. And so they, since I'm hauling wood with them, well, they didn't mind if we parked up there, so we did, because there was the road that went to their house, and then it kind of strayed off into going nowhere. And where this road went to nowhere, there was a mountain stream. That was our shower. Now, I bet there's not many of you who have bathed in a mountain stream. Well, I mean a high-up, cold-ass mountain stream. But we found a little spot where there was a little, waterfall? A place where you could back up and sit under it and have that waterfall all over you. It was so cold, it hurt, man. Hurt. It was so cold. But there was nothing to do about it. You can't get out. You gotta wash off. I mean, hey, that's all we had. And we were glad to have it. It was cold. And you know what? A tribute to the trooper of my girlfriend, Mary Ray, she bathed in there too. Yeah. She didn't wimp out and go to somebody's house and say, I'll see you in a minute, Dennis. No, she bathed in there too. She was a trooper, man. I didn't appreciate her, and I wasn't what I should have been to her because, she was a trooper all the way. And I always loved her for her trooperness. She became the lady singer in the band that we were in. And, she was just an all-around trooper. I remember one night, Harold and his girlfriend wanted to be adventurous, so that they spent the night in the back of my truck. If you could imagine somebody wanting to spend the night in the back of a 55 Chevy truck. So what I did was, you walk into the back, and then it kind of planed out on the sides and went over what would have been the edge of the truck. And so you walk in and there's extra shelving type things, on the sides. So what we had somehow was this planking that you could put across it near the cab. And that became the bed for Mary and I. And Harold and his girlfriend slept on the normal, bed of the truck. That's where they slept. So they're sleeping down here, we're sleeping up here. If there was ever a thought of an orgy or anything, it didn't happen. And it was, you got enough to do to just tuck in and say goodnight, Anyway. So there was a little game that Harold and I played. I was partnered with him for a year or two, because there was a lot of wood that was down in the snow, not like those grape steaks that Ted and I had gotten so easily. And after the snow fell, well, it was easy to get the wood at first because it was on the road or right next to the road. But as time went on, we had to go further and further away from the road to get the wood. And then we had to take the wood once we cut it further and further back down to the truck. So it became more and more, not so much fun, more work. as time went on. But, it lasted a while. There was a lot of wood down. And especially with him, his girlfriend living at the top of that mountain, well, there was a lot of dead, fallen trees up there. So there was work to be had. But we played a little game that was a recurring game. He became aware of my lack of memory. And he became a pretty good judge of how long it took before I couldn't remember the last time we played this game. The game called the Walk Down No Memory Lane. And that game is very simple. I described Harold to you, the hippie, with all this hair, and you could only see here, and I don't know what his skin condition was or anything, but he looked 70 years old. I mean, he was all wrinkled and everything. So whenever it came about time that he knew that I couldn't remember, because we'd play this game over and over, he would say, "How old do you think I am?" And I'd go, "Oh, I'm thinking 70. So I said, 60? Wanted to be polite. And he would laugh every time because he was actually 18 years old. 18, not 70, not 60, 18. But he looked ancient with all this. And it was such a glorious game because I didn't mind. It wasn't like rude. How dare you point out I had no memory? I knew I had no memory. And so it was as entertaining to me as it was to him every time. We could play this game. We played it many a time. You only had to wait, a certain amount of time, and then I wouldn't remember how the story ends. And so he would always say, "Dennis, how old do you think I am?" Now that's funny because we both got such a big laugh out of it. Now I was a well-known alcoholic at the time, and Harold must have had some similar attributes because he hung out with me. And one of our favorite things to do, we didn't get to do it a lot, but we loved it when we did, is Harold had a fisherman friend out at Jenner by the Sea. Now, Monterey is about 75 miles north of San Francisco. And you take River Road out and you get to Monterey, which is on the Russian River. And about, 10 miles west of Monterey, you come to Jenner by the Sea, and you got to either take a right or a left, because if you don't, you're getting wet. Anyway, he had a fisherman friend that he introduced me to, and Mary Ray would come along, and so Harold would, take us out there. And we so enjoyed spending time with this person and his wife. And every time that we met with this person, it was in a empty house, whatever, out at Jenner by the Sea. I think they must have lived on the boat wherever they, boated, fished, or whatever, because whenever we visited them in this house or that house at Jenner, there was never any furniture or anything in there. Now, you just can't be that poor if you live there. You just being human, you accumulate something, but there was nothing. in these houses where we visited them. So I'm thinking as I look back on it that, well, they must have lived on the boat, and this was a place where they could, sleep or something and not be on a boat. Friends had a house, a cabin. Said, sure, stay there, between renters or whatever. They had access to these places. And when we went to visit, they would sit down in the living room. There's no couch. There's the floor. And we would always bring beer because, well, we're alcoholics. And so was Harold, and so was this fisherman, an older, very nice person, and his wife. Now, his wife did not come in an evening gown or anything. She had fisherman coat and fisherman clothes on. There was no dressing up like, feminine or anything. These people were poor. I don't know what that says about the success or the failure of their business, or whether they just couldn't cope. And I can relate to that because I couldn't cope either. That's why I was a musician hiding out in this town in the first place. So, fisherman, musician, well, yeah, pretty even there. It's all just a wish and a prayer. And we just so enjoyed spending time with them, and we would bring beer. And, of course, we were the valued entertainment of the occasion whenever we'd go there, because they didn't have any money for beer. Like I say, I don't know the intimacies of their financial situation. All I know is they didn't have anything, and they were glad to have that beer. You could tell, if they had some, that fit right into our lifestyle. I was glad to have it too. We all just, isn't that glorious? We just shared that. Isn't that glorious? And it was. And the man wasn't unintelligent. He just was in the situation he was in for whatever. There are many reasons why people do things that don't necessarily have to do with intelligence, but with preferences. It's just it's a many-splendored, weird thing. It's the human mind. I don't have to tell you. So one time, we'd only visited this person a precious couple times. But the last time that we went there, somehow there came to bear a Valium. I forget whether it was the 5 milligram or the 10 milligram. That's how they come. And it's a Valium. And I think they were splayed out for all of us to have. And thanks for all the beer and everything. So Harold took one. We had driven out there in Harold's car, so he was driving. And on the way back, well, we were there when we took the Valium. And, so what? So what? It's a Valium. Lightweight. Come on. Don't bother me with the details. Well, I was reminded that not everyone was quite as cavalier and able as I was. Because we're driving back to Monterrey there are no straight roads in Monterrey, around the ocean and the redwoods, and there's no straight roads. It's like Highway 1, except it's not Highway 1, but it might as well be. And about halfway home, now, you want to talk about God being intervention? I'll tell you about that. There's this one place where they had the road, and they cut it through the mountain. You know, there's the mountain, and down there's the river. Well, in this one place, well, there was still part of the mountain over here, and it was a great big rock that you could walk around. I don't think you could drive around it, but you could walk around it. It was huge. It was a great, big, couple-story high rock. It was too big for them to bother with. They didn't bother about mowing it down. They just cut the highway through it and left that rock there. And it's at that very precise spot where Harold's Valium kicked in. So what happened was, again, thank God, he would have driven straight off the cliff, into the river a long way down. But he couldn't, because he hit that rock instead. And he hit that rock and boom, bounced off and bounced back to the road, and there we are. And I grabbed the wheel, and I said, "Are you kidding me?" And Harold just looked at me like, and I said, "Oh my God." So I slammed on the brakes for him. And I moved his ass out of the driver's seat and moved him back over to where I was. And I drove us home and everything was fine after that. But, if that rock weren't there, I wouldn't be telling you this story. Well, it's you to judge whether that was lucky or not. Anyway, that's the end of the story about a walk down no memory lane. Hope you liked it. I know it was a little scattered, but hey, what are you going to do? So now we got Buddy Holly once again with Maybe Baby to take us back out. Nice to see you. That's a kick, isn't it? You know it.